A warm welcome to you all to yet another exciting webinar by Blue Connect. Today we discuss the digital eye syndrome with Dr. Munsamy from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Please note that this platform did not allow us to capture your HPCSA registration numbers to allocate points, so email your HPCSA registration number to the email address that will be published during the session. For those of you who have emailed the HPCSA registration number before, please do not bother emailing. We already have your email address. So we'll simply, we already have your HPCSA registration number. So we'll simply use exactly the same number. Now, just a reminder that this is a webinar. There might be issues with connectivity on your side or on our side. If that happens, above the video or above the presentation, just click reconnect and you will be reconnected to the room. If there is an outright bad connection, we will pick it up on our side and we'll try and sort it out. Excuse me. Those of you who are joining our webinar and platform for the first time, welcome to Blue Connect platform, where our aim is just to connect people and discuss, share ideas and knowledge. Our platform is not associated with any group, it's just Blue, a safe space for professional debate and sharing of ideas across all professional and country lines in healthcare. So we invite you to keep attending the sessions and also to suggest some topics. I see some of you have already started sending some topics of interest. Thank you so much. We duly take that into consideration. Lastly, also to remind you as well to say that we hope to keep this platform free for all healthcare practitioners. So we invite you or request you to assist us in keeping it that way. So instead of charging for the sessions, we rather request you to pledge or to sponsor whatever you can to sustain the platform. Remember, the platform, we have to pay licenses, we have to pay staff behind the scenes for administration and the generation of the CPD certificates that you keep on getting. So we request you to do that. We also to thank Falcon Eye Lab, greatly so, because they have sponsored the setup of this platform. And they have also sponsored some of the sessions that we've also had during this month. So we sincerely thank Falcon Eye Lab, and if you could assist us by dropping them an email and SMS just to show our token of appreciation. As I said, we have Dr. Alvin Munsamy, and I also would like to thank you, Dr. Alvin Munsamy, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share with the colleagues today. You did mention that you just want to make sure that people are aware of the issues around digital eye syndrome. So I think we at the Blue Connect, we sincerely thank you for agreeing to come and share your ideas and your knowledge with the colleagues. And without further ado, the English is playing tricks on me today. Without further ado, Dr. Munsamy, let me hand over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kobe. I hope everybody can hear me. Thank you for allowing me to chat to you guys today regarding something that has caught my attention ever since we've gone into lockdown. And so I've titled this presentation today, Digital Eye Syndrome, a COVID-19 Lockdown Side Effect. And I put it in question marks because I'm wondering if this is a side effect that we will suffer during the lockdown. Just next slide. Just a little bit myself, so if anybody doesn't know me, that's how I look. Sorry, I can't share the video. I'm an academic from University of KwaZulu-Natal, and I run the binocular vision course and its clinic. I also run the diagnostics course and the eye disease course. I supervise some postgrad research, and I regard myself as a clinical scientist with working particularly in the areas of binocular vision, clinical optometry, and HIV. I do tend to talk a bit fast, so if you want to just alert Mr. Kobe if you think that I'm speaking a bit fast, to slow down. I'm sure he'll let me know. And I hope that you all can hear me loud and clear when I'm giving this talk. So I just want to just put a disclaimer. Some of you may already know what I'm talking about, so I apologize if you do know anything more. Just see it as a refresher. And my job today is not to teach you something brand new, it's just to sort of remind you about something that you already know about or may have read about. So I want you to sort of take this presentation to your patient, because I'm trying to raise awareness, because I think that this is more of a public health issue now with this new crisis that we're in, or pandemic that we're in. So what inspired the talk? So here's the problem. So COVID-19 requires social distancing, and we've all seemed to have replaced the electronic contact with the human contact, replaced the human contact with the electronic contact. And that sort of increased our online presence. And there's a whole batch of new users that's developing an electronic footprint. And they may not be aware of digital eye syndrome. And I thought that this would be an opportune moment to actually just remind eye care practitioners not to forget that there's a whole new batch of users that's entering the e-space. So who are these new users that I'm talking about? So I just want to quickly just point them out to you if you weren't aware. School children and young adults now are going to engage in online education. They're not used to looking at a screen the whole day. So that's a new user that you should pay attention to if you consult them. Telemedicine, doctors now are trying to adopt a sterile approach, so they're encouraging telemedicine as they're replacing chair time for screen time. White collar workers who usually are not playing in the online space are now forced to move into the online space. So white collar workers, I mean admin workers, most of them who are using computers are aware of it, but there may be a new batch of them that are now forced to work online. Virtual meetings, so that's something that's new in the workplace. So that's going to add to the screen time of users. Online shopping is on the rise. So people are going to spend more time browsing internet websites, looking for the cheapest price for whatever they're looking for. And then because we can't see our friends and family, we're going to spend a bit more time on social media. Families may want to, and friends may want to have virtual parties. And then there's this new subject that I've seen. It's the WhatsApp media, where everybody is spreading all this new information about COVID-19, and I've noticed people are sharing long articles and chain mail, and I'm wondering how many people are reading this. And I also want to draw your attention to the old age community. They're the sharpest. They would be the sharpest rise with e-device use. So watch for them. I don't know if you guys have noticed there's esports, because people can't engage in human contact anymore. So that's on the rise. Gamers are increasing. So I just wanted to alert you to the new users that you may come across, and don't forget that to not only talk to the people that you usually talk to, but be on the alert for the new users. So there's the new buzzword, screen time. So screen time is definitely rising. And before COVID-19, with the fourth industrial revolution, the screen time was starting to become a public health issue. But with COVID-19, it seemed to have accelerated the use of screens. And I think that it may be reaching a public health problem because LED screens these days are becoming unavoidable. And we need to be very, very cognizant of who's using it, for how long they're using it, because of social distancing. And so what is LED devices, or what's electronic devices? So your desktop computers, your laptop computers, your tablet devices, your mobile phones, and some modern television sets with LED backlighting. So these are the devices that we will use for our discussion to call screen time. And if you didn't know, the screen light that's emitted from these devices lie somewhere between 450 and 490 nanometers. And that may sort of ring a bit more clear later on when I talk about blue light. So I thought that we should start off by just sort of like explaining to you what is the difference when you look at a screen, when you're reading off a screen, versus when you're reading off a hard copy document. And I need you to know that they're not the same. So that's very, very important. And that's the reason why they've coined this digital eye strain. And here's an explanation for you. So when you're reading off a screen, the image quality of a screen is not the same compared to when you're reading off a hard copy. Because when you're reading off a hard copy, there's no glare coming off the hard copy. But when you're reading off a screen, they've got backlighting that's built into the screen, so it's emitting illumination. So image quality is very different from the screen versus your hard copy. Also, there's change in blink behavior when you're reading off a screen, and there's scientific studies that tell us, that show us that our blink behavior when we look at a screen is not the same of when we look at a hard copy. And then when you're looking at a desktop, you tend to look at it in the primary gaze, when you're looking straight ahead. But when you're reading hard copies, we very rarely pick our hard copies and raise it up directly in front of our line of sight. We're generally reading in a depressed gaze. And when you're reading in a straight ahead gaze, that means that the superior aspect of your eye is being exposed. So it may be subjected to some form of drying. And then when you're looking at a screen, you have something called micro fluctuations of accommodation with the screen, which doesn't appear to be there when you're looking at a hard copy. Micro fluctuations basically means small temporal changes in accommodation of a quarter diopter. So your accommodative system is continuously functional. It's not static, it's continuously active. And so if you package all these things together that I've just described, this is the reason why we have digital eye strain. Is our eyes respond to a screen differently compared to reading off a hard copy. I think that's, I hope I've given you enough evidence to prove to you that looking at a screen is not the same. And also don't forget the light coming off the screen and the pixelations and the refresh rate, all of that contributes to how we react to it. But the micro fluctuations in accommodation is very, very important and a very big contributing factor to digital eye strain. Okay, so what is the definition of digital eye strain? So the older optometrists may remember it being called computer vision syndrome. But because now we don't just have a computer to use, we have a computer in terms of a mobile phone, a computer in terms of a tablet, a computer in terms of a laptop. So now the word computer has been replaced by digital devices or electronic devices. So because of the myriad of digital devices that we're using that extends beyond the computer, hence the new name, digital eye syndrome. And I hope you appreciate the eyes that I added in there to sort of like convey the digital part of the syndrome. Digital eye syndrome is made up of two big areas, which I've based my talk on today, which is internal digital eye syndrome and external digital eye syndrome. And I will take each one and just broadly explain it to you. So let me just explain to you what will the patient complain of when they have digital eye syndrome. So these are the symptoms. So when you have internal digital eye, the internal aspect of the digital eye strain, patients which usually complain of blurred vision, problems refocusing from distance to near, headaches, eye strain, diplopia, all the asthenopic eye strain symptoms. Whereas patients that have external or the external component of the digital eye strain refers to burning eyes, irritation, dryness, excessive tearing, photophobia, just a general sense of ocular discomfort or malaise. And these symptoms are transient, so they come and go. But the problem is that they're frequent and persistent. And that is the reason why it becomes a syndrome. Because you can't take a tablet or antibiotic medicine or something like that and you'll never have it. You never have the strain again. It is something that needs to be managed by multiple professionals, not just eye doctors. And that sort of gives me a segue into discussing the neck shoulder pain. So we mustn't forget that as much as we focus on the eye, it's not part of the external, but I sort of linked it to that part. I also want you to not forget that patients, apart from having their normal eye headaches, because of the accommodative inversion system, they will also complain of neck, back, and shoulder pain. So that is part and parcel of the digital eye syndrome. So why would we have digital eye syndrome? What are the reasons for us developing it? So what I've done here on this slide, I've shown you the reasons for you to get the internal aspects of the digital eye strain. So basically, these bubbles that I've put up there are the reasons for something stressing the accommodative inversion system and ultimately affecting your refraction. So when reading close distances of a screen will force you to move closer and stress your accommodative system more, because you've got to exert more accommodation when you're reading. So that strains it. Small font sizes, again, will force you to look closer to the screen, and that is going to force your accommodation to work. So those two big ones we need to watch for when we're trying to manage this aspect of digital eye strain. And the one in red in the center, the main culprit for us experiencing digital eye strain is prolonged screen time. I think it's very important for us to know that it is our behavior with the screens of these devices that is causing it. So if the screen is used in a proper fashion and not for continuous time, you won't have this presentation of digital eye strain. So I put it in red sort of to create strain. I don't know if it's coming across. It's not as clear as the words on the either side of it, but I want you to remember that it's prolonged screen time. That's your take-home message. Prolonged screen time for you for digital eye strain. And there's something different that also plays a role in digital eye strain, which kind of belongs to the internal digital eye strain and the external digital eye strain, and that's cognitive demand. The cognitive demand refers to the intellectual properties of what you are reading. So if you are reading something of high cognitive value, so if you're studying something, or if you're looking at very, very serious documents and it's forcing you to think, you tend to, there's evidence to show that if you're reading it off a screen, you're more likely to develop digital eye strain. So looking at like big words far away, that doesn't require so much of thinking, it won't necessarily cause digital eye strain. But if you were looking at high intellectual documents, you're going to worry about digital eye strain. And then at the end, I just wanted to mention, but I have about a couple of slides to discuss this, digital blue light. That's something else that would also affect your accommodative and inversion system. So I'll explain to you about that in detail later on, but that also plays a part for you to manifest with these symptoms that I just mentioned now. So I hope that answered internal digital eye strain. So let's move to the next one. So external digital eye strain, which I think is something that the patient physically is noticing a bit more compared to the internal part, apart from the headaches that may be a bit debilitating. External digital eye strain is to do with the ocular surface of the eye. And the number one reason for it is blinking. The reason that you get those external manifestations, which I mentioned now, of burning, redness, tearing, and just general discomfort, and sometimes even discolored eyes, if you're using the computer for long periods of time, is reduced blinking. Reduced blinking and poor blink quality. Actually, there's more evidence pointing to the fact that the poor blink quality is more for culprit than the reduced blinking. So when your blinking is affected, you get drying of the anterior surface of the eye, in particular the conjunctiva and the cornea. And the reason that your blink rate is reduced. So at the bottom, you can see I've also put, there's an increase, the blink rate reduction increases with high cognitive demand, because when you're reading documents that are difficult for you to comprehend or requires a bit more effort to comprehend, you tend to lose the blink reflex and you tend to stare. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, okay, smaller font sizes and poor contrast coming off the screen will cause you to strain your eyes, and you'll basically lose that blink because you're trying to focus to clear things up. So, in a nutshell, together, what you need to remember is that the external part of it is due to blinking issues, and the internal part of it is due to accommodative and divergence issues and the stress of it because of the long periods of time. So if you were to look at a screen for the normal time, if you're spotting or if you're looking at it for like 10, 20 minutes, you're not going to get digital eye strain, but it's the marathon workers that are higher risk. Okay, so I've sort of put this word in inverted commas, pathophysiology. So in eye disease, when we teach about a disease, we try to explain what are the functional changes that occur in the eye that would explain this type of disease. So that's why I put it in inverted commas, because it's not a disease, but it's just my word that I'm just sort of like trying to use to explain to you what's going on. Why are we experiencing this digital eye strain? I see my animations are not playing, Mr. Kobe. Just check to see on your if that's the case, because I think the slide is supposed to be animated. When you squint, so you must have heard of the word squint, but not squint as in strabismus. So patients will tell you they're squinting. So when you squint, we call it lid squinting, where you're sort of like trying to narrow the palpable aperture. And when you're looking at a computer, patients, because of this working distance and this glare and this small fonts and then the type of material you're reading, you tend to use something called lid squinting. So you're sort of like straining your eyes. And that creates tension in your orbicularis oculis muscle. So from your anatomy, if you remember, the orbicularis oculi muscle is responsible for keeping your eyes open, and the levator palpebris superioris is responsible for closing your eye. So this muscle now, that's trying to keep your eye open, the orbicularis ocular muscle, develops tension in it because you're trying to squint. So by squinting it, you're creating some form of overaction you're loading your orbicularis oculi muscle. And when that muscle starts to tire out, that results in pain and tired eyes, which is what the patient complains of. So eye-related tiredness seems to be directly related to the muscle load of the orbicularis oculi muscle. And there's actually studies that have actually did muscle, they call it electromyography, that have actually studied the orbicularis muscle during this screen time to actually explain to you why this patient complains of tired eyes. Seems to be the most common complaint. And so why do we squint? We try to squint because we want to improve our visual acuity if we have a refractive error. So if these patients have uncorrected refractive errors, they're going to try and screw up their eyes, right? Squint their eyes to clear up what they're seeing. And then you're trying to also reduce retinal illumination of the glare sources of the screen from the superior field of your vision. And that is kind of explaining to you, obviously it's missing the accommodation and divergence part, but kind of explaining that the tiredness that patients complain around the eye. I want to repeat that because I think that's important for you to understand. So when you squint your lids, you create tension in your orbicularis oculi muscle that overloads the muscle, causing it to overact. And when it's overacting, it results in fatigue and pain, and the patient basically complains about the tiredness related around the eye. Okay, so I'm trying to keep it light. So I don't know if Mr. Kobe has any questions from anybody that I can sort of answer. If anybody has missed anything that I've said. So every 10 slides, I'm going to put I have a question rest part. So I haven't spoken for too long. I've kept it a bit light, considering it's the afternoon. Mr. Kobe, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. In fact, the first one is more a comment, but I'll just read it maybe just for your thoughts. The practitioner says, digital eye syndrome patient needs optometrists and physiotherapists. The way we sit plays a role 2, hence physio need to advise on how your spinal cords end up bending because of back pain. What would be your thought on that?
So that's part of my second last slide. I have included that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then this one is a question. It says, what are your thoughts on the digital devices and the blue light affecting the sleep patterns of patients, in particular to children with ADHD?
Okay, so
I'm also covering that later on.
I have prepared special slides for that. Yeah.
Okay. Then the last one for this particular session, it says, no, in fact, I see someone just actually posted. Let me read both of them. The second last says, can internal digital eye syndrome cause internal inflammation resulting in floaters?
Okay, no, it can't. No, because it's to do with the actual visual system itself of accommodation and vergence. I haven't come across anything to do with the posterior aspect of the eye. But I think that maybe if there's a link to myopia progression, maybe that then it may play, but not directly from the digital eye strain, maybe more from the myopia issues.
Okay, there's another one. I see colleagues are now sending. Great colleagues, keep them coming. But I'll just you'll let me know when to stop, Dr. Munsamy.
Yeah.
So there's one that says, could ocularis muscle fatigue contribute to eyelid twitching?
It's definitely the muscle that's causing the eyelid to twitch. So if you would know, patients that usually have sleep deprivation usually suffer from eyelid twitching. And that's the twitch that you're experiencing when you have the muscle twitch from. So that's the muscle that you're actually talking about that's causing the twitch.
Okay. Thank you. The next one says, what is the difference between blink behavior when you are reading from a screen compared to reading from a hard copy?
Yeah, so I was going to put that in the next slide where I'm talking about signs. So basically, blink behavior is the reduced blink rate and the reduced blink amplitude, so the force at which you close your eyes, and the incomplete blink. So you're not having full lid closure then that's the blink behavior that I'm discussing when you are looking off a screen compared to when you're looking off a hard copy. Okay.
The next one says, is a blue control ARC really much better than a normal basic ARC for digital screens? And what is the best ARC for digital screens?
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a slide in management, and hopefully I'll cover that for you. So I'm taking it in layers. So I've done signs and I've done definitions. So the next section will be, so I've done symptoms and definitions. The next section will be signs. And then I'll talk about blue light and the risk factors. And then I'll talk about management towards the end. And hopefully I'll be able to remember that question, the ARC and the blue light. I mean, the blue blockers.
Okay. I'll copy the question and keep it for you, Dr. Munsamy.
Okay.
Then I think maybe this would be the last question. It says, is it better for us to rather watch YouTube instead of reading documents?
That's the $1 million question. I thought of that. I really can't answer that question because I don't have evidence-based research to support the answer. But obviously, it's easier to watch moving targets as opposed to moving your eyes and reading off a screen. But I haven't got a scientific answer for that one.
Okay.
Can we continue?
Yes, please go.
Okay. 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 So here's the blue light situation. So I did mention that we need to look. This is not a blue light lecture, but I know there's a lot of people that are interested in blue light and trying to understand it. And I've spent a significant amount of time last year on this particular subject, trying to find out what's the big hoo-ha about it. So I've just prepared 2 slides, but it looks like I'm going to get way more questions on this one. So blue light is regarded as high energy visible light that has a wavelength between 380 nanometers and 500 nanometers. That's high energy visible blue light. And your cornea naturally in a normal mature person will absorb less than 300 nanometers, and your crystalline lens absorbs below 400 nanometers. So they give you some form of protection, natural protection against blue light. And then the most famous blue light, which you call violet light, which is the light coming off the sun's rays, that's the blue light that is at 5 to 6,000 lux. That's how bright it is. That's the blue light that's outside. But what I'm talking about is digital blue light, which is the blue light that's being emitted from the LED backlighting, right, of your screens. And digital blue light is 100 times less strong than the 5 to 6,000 lux emitted from the sunlight, which is your violet light. So I think that's very important for you to know, because I've realized that there may be a blurring of lines between digital blue light and blue light itself. So laboratory and animal studies have shown that blue light, not digital blue light causes retinal damage. And how it does that, very simply, I've tried to take the whole paper and just give it to you in like one line. Oxidative stress of the outer segment of photoreceptors and the retinal pigment epithelium. So it causes that, and that's why they say that blue light has a role in macular degeneration, age-related macular degeneration. Okay, but that is pure blue light. We're not talking about digital blue light, and I don't know whether people may be misunderstanding that. And so there's the role of digital blue light in the long-term use of these devices, which may play a role in macular degeneration and retinal health. Okay, but there's no studies to show that digital blue light is causing macular degeneration presently. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we don't have any evidence to state that digital blue light is a biohazard, like the blue light that was shone onto the retinas of mammals, I think it was rats, and caused the macula to get damaged. But there's no randomized control trials, but there is a few clinical studies that have shown, using blue blocking lenses, that digital blue light causes eye strain. And that's the level of evidence that we have. So if I can show you that digital blue light, which is why I've roped it into this whole digital eye syndrome, it has a big role to play, because presently from where we're sitting, it's more so has a big role in eye strain as opposed to macular health. Macular health, we still need randomized controlled trials to actually look to see what impact digital blue light has on macular health. We can postulate that long-term use of it may have a role to play, but we've got no real evidence. We've got laboratory evidence. We don't have human evidence. If anybody has picked up any studies in the last day or two, please let me know. So basically what these studies did, they've taken blue blocking lenses and they looked at patients when they were doing their computer work, laptop or whatever device work. And they've shown basically that when you use the blue blocking lenses, your eye strain is reduced. And that's how they've indirectly proven that digital blue light causes eye strain or asthenopia. And then I think one of the people have already mentioned that digital blue light affects sleep. So this is outside our scope, but I just thought I'd just add it in there because I'm sure you may be aware of this. So it affects sleep by causing the pineal gland to reduce melatonin production, which is the hormone of sleep, by stimulating the pathway from something called the intrinsic photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, which has something called melanopsin, which is part of the pathway that goes all the way to the pineal gland in your brain that causes a reduction in melatonin production. And these, which we call the fourth photoreceptor, intrinsic photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, they respond to wavelength at 482 nanometers. So that causes the stimulation at around that wavelength of blue light that will cause your pineal gland to reduce melatonin, and that's what affects sleep. So basically, using digital devices at night is something that we need to be cognizant of, because it does affect the the sleep of most people that are basically addicted to these devices. So that in a nutshell is basically the areas that I wanted to pick on in terms of blue light, something that you can take away with you, right? So just remember, blue light causes digital blue light. So don't confuse blue light with digital blue light. So digital blue light is what I'm calling blue light that's emitted off your screens, because you also have blue light outside, which is not bad for you. You need blue light. I mean, there's studies outside that say that that sunlight, which is part of the blue light, that's responsible for controlling myopia. So there is good blue light and bad blue light. The reason that we're talking about this blue light is that blue light is usually something that's supposed to be around when the sun is out during the day. And we are not used to getting blue light when the sun sets. And it's because we're getting exposed to these when the sun sets. That's why it's activating the cycle, causing your sleep to get deprived and the latency of sleep to be affected. But for us as optometrists, when you think of digital blue light, I want you to remember eye strain. This is another risk factor. This group of patients, I'm no contact lens expert, but it's important for you to remember that you're living in a digital age, and contact lenses is something that most of these patients would want to use if they're wearing glasses. And in particular, we've got evidence to show soft contact lens wearers are at risk for digital eye strain. So these patients are at risk for dry eye symptoms, basically 12 times more than emmetropes. So soft contact lens wearers are 12 times more likely to complain of dry eye symptoms, which is the excessive tearing, the burning type of sensation that most dry eye patients complain of, a foreign body sensation, sometimes photophobia. So when you compare them to emmetropes, we've got evidence to show they're 12 times more likely to complain of dry eye symptoms and 5 times more likely to complain of dry eye symptoms than spectacle wearers. Okay, so this is not one time or half a time, so this is quite a high risk. So I want you to be cognizant of patients that use contact lenses to do extended periods of screen time. So no one's saying that you shouldn't look at your screen, but it's the prolonged exposure that's causing the digital eye strain. And already, if they have, most contact lens wearers these days, for whatever reason, usually have some form of dry eye. So just be cognizant of that. And this dry eye symptom is related to the duration of use of the device, the reduced blink rate with concentrated tasks, and the reduced amplitude and fullness of blink. Okay, that contributes to these soft contact lens wearers complaining of dry eye. So please be careful if these patients are office workers and they are using computers for more than 50% of the day. You need to just watch that that they don't complain of digital eye strain. Okay, and then I wanted to just touch on the new technology. So based on what I said, and very simply, I'm trying to put it as simple as I can. This digital eye strain is to do with how close you use these devices and how small the fonts are. And in this case, if you look at a mobile phone, a tablet device, an electronic device, a laptop or a desktop, look at the size of the watch. And what I've noticed is that people are using this watch like a phone. So a watch needs to be used for spotting. So if you use this watch like a watch, you won't have any digital eye strain. But if you start to keep your cell phone away and you start to read your messages, your emails, all of that off this watch, the screen size of this watch is about 3 centimeters by 4 centimeters. That's going to force you to look closer. You're going to bring that watch closer. That's forcing your accommodative system to cause more stress. And it's going to, and if you're pre-presbyopic, that's going to be a double whammy. Or if you're presbyopic, so you need to just just be aware of these new technologies. I didn't want to discuss the Google glasses, but that's something else that you can always read about. But just pay attention to these patients here who seems to be glued to their watches in addition to their phone, purely because of the size of the screen. Okay, so how do you diagnose digital eye strain? So that's the next part. So I've given you some background on the signs and on the symptoms of this patient. So the diagnosis can be made with a combination of subjective methods and objective methods. It's not a very sophisticated diagnosis, so it's very important for you to know with these patients is that you need to ensure that they have sound accommodative version systems, they have corrected refractive errors, because all that will just amplify the digital eye strain. What I think that we should start using these days is self-administered questionnaires for digital eye strain. And I've picked on 2 here that's a bit famous, and there's a whole lot of them. And these can be found freely online. There's the 6-item visual fatigue scale. Okay, and then the more famous one, the computer vision syndrome questionnaire, which is something a bit more invasive in terms of looking at all these symptoms that I spoke to you about earlier on from the internal and the external digital eye strain, and sort of like give you a score to basically tell you whether the patient has a problem. And what's nice about this, it can be self-administered. The scoring part of it is a little bit complicated, but I don't see why a patient can't even score. But it's made up of 16 symptoms, and it's made up of a severity of the symptom. So it's a combination of if you have the symptom and if you do have it, how severe the symptom is. So here's, oh gosh, this is small. I think we're going to get eye strain looking at this. I apologize for that. I thought it would come up bigger. So this is the computer vision syndrome questionnaire. On the left-hand side is the actual questionnaire. There's 16 questions, and essentially it's asking you if you're experiencing burning, itching, feeling foreign body, do you experience tearing, excessive blinking, eye redness, eye pain, heavy eyelids, dryness, blurred vision, double vision, difficulty focusing from near to far, increased sensitivity to light, colored halos around lights, feeling that sight is worsening, and any headaches. So you basically answer you either never experienced it, occasionally experienced it, or often or always experienced it. And if you say you've occasionally or often experienced it, then they want you to rate it. Is it moderate and is it intense? And they give you a key here to explain what does never mean, what does occasionally mean. Often means 2 to 3 times a week or almost every day. Okay, so when your patient ticks this question, then it says over here employee. So you can actually train one of your staff members to do it. Ideally, you should. You basically would basically score. There's a score for frequency. You allocate for 0 if never, and you get if it's occasional 1 and 2. You would if it's always, and so here's the frequency. You give a score, and then the intensity. If it's moderate, you give a 1, and if it's intense, you give a 2. And so basically what happens, you've got to multiply these 2, right, to get a score. And when you multiply, it seems complicated, but really it isn't. And then you recode it. And then if you add up all these after you've recoded, this is the instruction, that's all there is. It's so easy. If you get a score greater than 6, you are thought to have computer vision syndrome. So it's a subjective questionnaire. It's not bulletproof. I would like you to use it in combination or maybe a good screener. I took this questionnaire today and I got a 10. So I'm definitely suffering from digital eye strain preparing this webinar. But if you want me, I can try and share this with you. I think that's important for you to actually have some form of device. So when they're sitting outside in your waiting room, it'll be nice if they could fill this out for you whilst they're waiting. So that's your subjective, and then there's other questionnaires that you could choose to use. Just make sure that the questionnaire is validated when you're using it. Objectively, based on what I've said, so somebody asked me just now about the blink behavior. So the blink behavior results in dry eye. So normal patients blink, and there's a whole lot of studies here, so I've just took an average. Normal patients blink 15 to 20 blinks per minute. But when studies have shown that when they use digital devices, that blink rate reduces to less than 10. So I've quoted a study here where it says 7 blinks a minute. So your blink rate is almost halving from normal blink rate to when you're looking at a screen. And secondly, the incomplete blinking, right, causes, so you blink, you reduce in your blink rate, right, and you don't blink fully. And if you don't blink fully, you cause evaporation of your tear film, and that reduces your tear breakup time. And that is the reason that patients with digital eye strain and the external form have dry eye. That's something that's very, very important. And I just wanted to also just remind you that we shouldn't only be doing dry eye testing on contact lens patients. And I don't know if anybody thinks about dry eye testing only when we have a contact lens patient. But in the environment that we live in these days, I think it's important that you think more about dry eye patients more and more, not even just for digital eye strain, just because the world is warming up and humidity levels are different. Look, in Durban it may be a bit easier, but up in Joburg with more drier climates, you should look at dry eye as a routine part of your exam. So dry eye testing is important in digital eye strain. Then in the accommodation for pre-presbyopes, I wanted you to alert you to the accommodative response. So basically what I'm describing here, these are indices of visual fatigue. So the dry eye patients would have that when they're using the digital devices. Then these pre-presbyopic patients who's over-accommodating will end up with a reduced accommodative response, and we call that a lag. So a lag of accommodation, but we all have a normal lag of accommodation, but the lag is reduced, and some studies say that it can be reduced up to 1 diopter with digital eye strain. Remember, the longer you read, the worse it gets. Okay, so quickly, I'll just give you a quick optometry tip. So lag is basically when you're looking at an object, you basically are not focusing on the object, you are focusing slightly behind the object. And normal human beings have a lag of about half a diopter. And the reason they have a lag of about half a diopter is because we have the pupil that's constricting, and that allows us a depth of focus where we can move our image in front and behind our retina, and we can still maintain clarity. So we call it the lazy lag of accommodation. And normal patients will be about half a diopter. And what we are saying is that this is worse, a little bit worse often in patients with digital eye strain. I also want to just draw attention to the fact that patients with digital eye strain their diagnosis is very gray. So there's no big changes in big clinic conditions, like if you've got accommodative insufficiency, your amps are really low, your lag will be 1.5 diopters. It's not so obvious unless the patient's really strained. Okay, so you need to be a bit cautious when you put all of these things together. That's why it's a syndrome. Okay, you have to map them out together for you to come up to a conclusive diagnosis. The next thing that I need you to concern what we in terms of accommodation that's affected is the accommodative facilities. So your accommodative facilities is reduced. So basically, I don't know if you remember the flipper test, right? You use your +2s, -2s. So basically, because when you're looking at the screen and you're copying off something else, you're looking somewhere else, you're changing fixation. So when you're moving from distance to near, or from one part of a hard material to the actual screen, and you do this continuously, your facilities are getting stressed and getting fatigued. Okay, so patients will have reduced facilities, reduced lag, and then there's something that we don't pay attention to, but that could also explain about the behavior of our eyes on a screen. So when we looking at a computer screen, we have reduced pupil size after continuous digital tasks. So basically, it's almost an after effect, and the pupil, because of the near tri, that's where the pupil is involved, your accommodation, your convergence, and your pupil constriction. It is thought that you're getting reduced pupil size because of spasm of the sphincter and the ciliary muscle, and some studies have noticed something called a hippus. So the hippus is the rhythmic motion of the pupil where it dilates, contracts, dilates, contracts, but continuously doing that. So it's a qualitative assessment of it, not so much a quantitative, like how you would measure the lag or measure the facility or measure the blink rate. So you may want to look at the pupils to see if they're very, very reduced and symmetrical, or if they're in spasm of some sort, because of the exposure to continuous screen time. And there's something I wanted to add from a bit more scientific laboratory-based evidence. Patients that have, sadly we can't do this in the rooms, but patients that have a reduced critical flicker frequency when they use the digital devices for prolonged time. So all these studies that I've been talking about, the blue light studies, and all these studies that I've talked about, try to basically map for us what digital eye strain, they have used, and particularly in the blue light studies, they've used critical flicker frequency. Critical flicker frequency basically is the rate at which you would, so basically it's a metric for assessing fatigue and mental workload. And in digital eye strain, it is thought that that your critical flicker frequency is reduced. Okay, so a decline in critical flicker frequency usually implies that there's reduced activity on the retina and your optic nerve. So it's a metric for visual fatigue as well as mental fatigue. And essentially, if you think of a stationary light and a blinking light, so if you're able to, if a light was blinking, and as the frequency of the blink increased, if you're able to decipher the frequency of the blinking light 50% of the time from that of a stationary non-blinking light, that is a measure of your critical flicker frequency. And that is a very crude explanation, but I tried to simplify it as much as I could. And laboratory studies have used this to actually document for us the impact of certain treatment modalities like blue blocking lenses and the fatigue status of vision by looking at critical flicker frequency. So these kind of like points you to the areas in eye testing that you may want to look at if you have a patient that you're suspecting digital eye strain. Okay, so that's a segue into what are the clinical tests that one needs to do when we have digital eye strain. So I think that is very important for you to pay attention to accommodation and convergence. So when you're doing accommodative facility testing, ideally you should do it with heart charts. But if you don't have a heart chart with you, you could use your near card and your distance chart. You could use a flipper, +2, -2 flipper, and you flip. One cycle is when you can clear up +2 and then flip and you clear up -2. And you normally do it at 40 centimeters, and the normal is 11 cycles per minute. These days, we have something new, which we call amplitude scale facilities, which is another topic altogether. But basically, it customizes your probe lens and your test distance to measure facilities. So that sort of like doesn't give younger patients an edge over older patients. And then your accommodative response is something that's very important. So I'm not familiar if I don't know if all of you do dynamic retinoscopy, but dynamic retinoscopy is your MEM retinoscopy, which is your monocular estimate method retinoscopy, where you put your MEM cards and you basically ask the patient for their harm and distance, and you scope vertically in the vertical meridian, right eye, left eye, and you look for the movement, the reflex, and you neutralize. And I mentioned now that in the previous slide that your lag, you normally get a lag, so you'll get a with movement, and that's usually reduced in these patients. So you want to do your dynamic retinoscopy, which is something that you may not always do, but you may be doing with children a lot. Okay, you want to do facilities as well, because the facilities usually is looking at the fatigue status of your accommodation. And you may want to do something very different for digital eye, where you want to consider doing these at the screen, at the distance at which the screen is placed. So if somebody is, from an ergonomics perspective, you can actually see how are they responding, as opposed to always doing everything at 40 centimeters. But we may be placing our screens at different distances for different patients. So that's very, very important that you attempt to tell the patient to explain to you how is it they're using their screen or where's their screen, and do it at that particular distance to customize the accommodative testing. Refraction, so I wanted to just let you know that the refractive error that seems to be popping up in patients that have digital eye strain is astigmatism. So they've got studies where they can show some patients up to 1 to 2 diopters of astigmatism because of digital eye strain for years. So astigmatism is a refractive error that's involved in this whole strain, and correcting that may help you a lot. And then the presbyopic patient, because digital eye strain has a close association with astigmatism, I want you to watch the presbyopic patients that are buying off-the-shelf readers, because the off-the-shelf readers does not cater for astigmatism. And if you basically see any of your patients that maybe want to use that for working on the computer, they can do it maybe if they're spotting for like 5 or 10 minutes. But if they are workers on a desktop for hours in the day, if that's their day job, you should dissuade them because it doesn't cater for the astigmatism. So it's very important that we declare now that when you have to have done a full refraction before you can go look at your accommodative and your virgin system, you have to correct that. And half the problem is even if you prescribe the smallest of refractive errors, like small refractors, 050 cylinders, 075, those will definitely help the patient. And I'm sure most of you know that from experience. NPC, phorias, heterophorias, reserves, and the associated phoria are tests that you want to do in these patients. So you need to do that. So the chair time is quite heavy. So you most likely will get receded NPCs, high exophorias, reduced base out reserves, more likely because you're calling on the convergence, and you may find an associated phoria. The associated phoria is basically the amount of prism that neutralizes your fixation disparities. I'm not sure if you guys are in the habit of measuring fixation disparity, but usually prescribing associated phorias most of the time, the prism from the associated phoria helps a lot of patients, not just digital eye patients, but binocular vision patients. So I'm not going to go into detail, but basically, if you were to pick on these would be reduced, right? Exo reduced, more remote. Okay, reserves, maybe both reserves may be reduced, and you're most likely to find an associated phoria. But the message here is that you need to focus on accommodative testing and your virgins testing. Look, we're talking about facilities and response, but it's already assumed that you would have assessed, before you even assess facilities and response, that you would assess the patient's accommodation, amplitude of accommodation, because that should be a basic test when you're doing a routine eye test. So I don't know if I've spoken too long, but I think that this may be a time to take some questions, Mr. Kobe. Excuse my lighthearted humor. But if anybody has any questions, I can take some questions now, just to sort of like break the monotony of me talking to the screen.
Okay. Yes, we do have a couple of questions. In fact, I note here that we have about 10 questions. I don't know if you want me to take all of them now, but let me just read a few and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So the first one says, how important is the working distance? And e.g., a cell phone is 30 centimeters and a PC screen is about 50 centimeters. I think you did cover on that, but maybe you can elaborate more.
So I have a special section on management next, which is coming up next, which I pick on the 50 centimeters and all of that. I will talk about that. Maybe they can ask that question after that.
Okay. I think this one was just a follow-up comment on that issue with the muscle fatigue contributing to the eyelid twitching. It says that stress also causes a fast pulse-like twitching.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that, because stress causes sleep deprivation as well. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. The third one is saying, is there any truth to blue blocking lenses may cause form deprivation refractive error?
I haven't seen anything, any adverse effects of blue blocking lenses. But if the person posing the question has seen any information, I would appreciate it if they would share that, because something has made them ask that question.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that person that posed that question, if you can maybe just clarify or maybe share with us what stimulated that question, we would really appreciate that. The next question says, how are natural blue light, digital blue light, and xenon blue light from motor vehicles differentiated in relation to ocular stress?
Okay, so I can't answer the xenon blue light, because anyone that knows me knows I know nothing about cars.
Okay.
But I did speak at length about the natural blue light and the digital blue light, and I did mention that natural blue light has a 5,000 to 6,000 lux illumination, and digital blue light is 100 times less. So it's like 5 to 600 versus 5 to 6,000. So there's a big difference in terms of natural blue light and digital blue light, which is why I've said that it's not a biohazard in the way in which everybody is told that blue light causes macular degeneration and we need to worry about it. That's natural blue light. We are talking about digital blue light and the blue light coming off your LED screens, and I'm saying that there's no evidence to show that. Hence the joke on my screen, right? That's saying your websites have burnt holes in your retina. So there's no evidence to show that it's causing that type of biohazard. But we've got plenty of evidence to show that digital eye strain or asthenopia is caused from digital blue light. The natural blue light is what you would know to cause, as in your cataracts and your retina and your macular degeneration. I hope I've answered that question in case the person missed me saying that.
Okay, thank you. I think I do have some websites on my retina as well. So the next one says, how was eye strain scientifically measured to prove that it was caused specifically by the blue light and not prolonged looking at light of any wavelength?
So they basically made the patients look at a computer screen for more than 2 hours, and they gave the patients blue blocking lenses, high and low, blue blocking high, there's high, low, and medium blue blocking lenses. And they assessed before and after, the impact on critical flicker frequency, blink rate, accommodation facilities, your lag of accommodation. And those were all the indices that I mentioned that were shown to have improved after the blue. So those were indirect studies. They weren't direct studies, but they did go up to 2 hours or more of looking at the screens. That's how it was done. So the indices of measurement are a little bit what is not so clinically obvious. So they've looked at the fatigue status of vision. We're looking at the facilities, but the most scientific one is the critical flicker frequency. At the end of this webinar, I have a resource for all of you to read. I think every optometrist listening to that should read that paper, which is professed to be used by the American Academy, the British, basically the whole world uses. It's a nice review paper. And I'll share the resource with you, and that will color up all the gaps that may be popping up whilst you're listening to me.
Okay. I see there are some people who are saying that they're losing sound. Please, as I advised when we started, just reconnect. I know that some are saying that even after reconnecting multiple times, just to advise that we do have quite a number of people connected here. So chances are the challenge is on your side. Please just log off and log on again. I do have a couple of questions here. The next one says, what about the effects of reduction in serotonin and cortisol with blue light filters causing depression and sleepiness?
Yeah, that's out of my scope, guys. That's for the sleep scientists and the psychologists. So I really don't want to venture, as much as I've read a lot on that, I really don't want to venture into any topic outside the scope of optometrists. But maybe what's the first part of it, Mr. Kobe?
It was talking about the effect of serotonin and cortisol with blue light filters.
Right. So serotonin is the hormone of awakeness, right? Okay, and melatonin is the hormone of sleep. So your serotonin levels functional during the waking hours of the day, and your melatonin levels are functional during the sleeping, also when the sun sets. So your sleep cycle kicks in after 5 p.m. in the evening. That's when you start to wind down and the melatonin levels start to rise and the serotonin levels start to drop. So when we're talking about blue blocking lenses, I haven't seen anything measuring the serotonin levels unless you found a paper, whoever's posing the question, to suggest that. I have seen where they measured the melatonin levels, okay, to cause to explain the sleep deprivation. But again, that's a very interesting question. I also haven't looked at anything about cortisol. So obviously, cortisol is a hormone of stress, and that will increase alertness in there. So it would make sense from what you're saying, just from me listening to the question. But I haven't come across anything that speaks about any scientific evidence relating the cortisol directly to the sleep deprivation and the blue blocking lenses. And that'll be quite an interesting study.
Right. The next one says, with visual, ocular, and postural factors all at optimal level, please discuss the best ambient lighting requirements to decrease digital eye strain.
Yeah, so I've got a slide on that showing you the picture and talking about the actual position of lighting in the management. So hopefully when I get to that part, if you're still not satisfied with what I've said, maybe you can pose a question again, because I have another round of questions at the end of the talk.
Okay. Now, I think this one would be the last one for this round. It says, please explain lag again and why the 1 diopter is normal. I don't know if you did say that, but that's
yeah. Okay, so I didn't say 1 diopter is normal. I said half a diopter is normal. But I said that people suffering from digital eye strain may get up to 1 diopter worse lag. So we've got evidence to say that. So the actual number ranges between 0.33 diopters and 0.93 diopters of reduction from the natural lag. So when you're looking at something, your natural lag is half a diopter. So plus or 50 will come up on your dynamic retinoscopy. Okay, and patients that have digital eye strain would have something more in the range of probably 1 diopter or worse. But not normal people. Normal people can go up to plus or 7.5 of lag. I hope I've understood the question properly. Please repost again if I didn't answer it correctly.
Okay, I think that is it for now. Maybe you can.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay, so before I move on to management, I found, so this is the table that I've extracted from a study done in 2019, and I thought that it's all that I've said. You're only human, and you may have missed some stuff that I've said, and so I just wanted to quickly show you the link between the system in the eye and the actual complaint, right? So basically, if you look at the right at the bottom, if you look at the blue writing, so your internal digital eye strain, digital eye syndrome is dealing with the blue. Your external digital eye strain is dealing with the gray. So if you look at it on the blue at the bottom, if you look at headaches, heaviness of eyes, sore eyes, tired, diplopia, these are all linked to your accommodative and convergent system, okay, and your refractive error. That's pointing to you in the direction of those systems. So if you're complaining of these symptoms, it could be because you have pupil unrest, increase in micro fluctuations, increase in your lag, decrease in your convergence. You may have manifestation of a fixation disparity. Your eyelid is squinting. You're suffering from defocus. So if you're suffering from defocus and you have constant accommodative stimulus, you may end up with uncorrected refractive error. You may require correction of your stigmatism in particular, which is something that I want you to take away with you today about digital eye strain. If there's a refractive error you want to think about, watch for astigmatism, okay, and presbyopia. Whereas when you're having problems with so if you look at the bottom, they're very similar in the manifestation of the symptom. But the systems on the top are different. So if it's your accommodative convergent system, you could also complain of blurred vision, diplopia, focusing difficulties, tired eyes, and they're coming because of the signs I mentioned, which is your increase in lag, your decrease in convergence, your BD and your fixation disparity. And that's all because of stress of your vergent system and your accommodative system. And now something that you may not have paid attention to, which is your pupil reaction. Okay. And then if you look on the other side, which is your external digital eye strain, which is basically, or syndrome, will basically manifest as dry. Patients think that their eyes feel dry, their eyes feel itchy, irritated, scratchy, they suffer from glare, their eyes look red, they're burning, they have blurred vision, it's sore, it's tight, so just a general sense of malaise, but from an external, you can actually physically see the manifestation of it. If they're complaining, it could come from two possible reasons. The first one, the tear quality and tear volume may be affected, and that's because of drying out of your conjunctiva and your cornea. And secondly, the blink properties and the contact lens wearers may be suffering from this because of unstable tear production, unstable tear film thinning of their tears, because of their blink rate reduction in force or amplitude of blink, and the lens and the lid relationship and the acting for. So it's the second time that we're picking on contact lens wearers. So I hope you're getting the message that you need to watch for those patients. So this is just an overview of what I was trying to explain. Then what I thought you should know is, let's try and narrow it down to see, okay, what's where. So this table nicely talks about handheld digital devices versus desk or personal computers. So they're basically pointing to the work. So if you look at, let's take the smartphones and the tablets, which are handheld, right? Okay, decreased working distance and font size, ambient lighting, which is the glare from outside the computer, and the blue light, right, would interfere with your. So in terms of the working distance of the fonts, it'll cause your accommodation demand to increase, your eyelid to start squinting, your orbicularis load to increase. That will force you get, and that'll increase blood flow through the lids, and it'll fatigue, and that's how you get the sore, tired eyes. Okay, and in terms of the blue light and the glare, okay, they may. So it's saying over here, you get sustained pupil constriction, eyelid squinting, and they've got the retinal cell damage. But I'm really cautioning with digital blue light and the retinal cell damage. I would think more maybe like years or decades of use of the computer, of the handheld devices. And patients from a short-term perspective will complain of tired, heavy eyes, and from a long-term perspective, they're pointing to more toxicity of the retina. And when it comes to the personal laptops, the screen position relative to the eye and the chair height. So remember I mentioned that that when you're looking at a computer screen or a desktop, your eyes are in the primary gaze most of the time, and it's not a natural position for your eyes to be in. Okay, so you need to watch for that, causing the dryness and the tiredness, and then the actual physical position of the patient is coming into play. The ergonomics of the situation is coming into play when you're using laptops, and that's causing the muscle strain in your neck, your face, and your back. So this is just trying to delineate the different things to look for. So when you're looking for handheld devices, watch for the close working distance of the small writing. When you're looking at the desktop, laptop, watch for the chair height and the screen height and the screen position. Okay, which brings me to the last part of the talk, which is management of digital. So what are we going to do? So I hope you can appreciate the comic here. So this is what the public health issue that I'm trying to raise, that these patients will present to the GP and they'll basically start using oral analgesics. So it says tons of aspirin, calling them on. So we don't want our patients to take a whole lot of painkillers to overcome digital eye strain, because that's basically putting a Band-Aid on the problem and it's not solving the cause of the problem. So we need to advise on proper visual hygiene. Okay, so that's the main management. The main non-optical management is advising proper visual hygiene for the patient. So you all may be very familiar with this rule, the 20-20-20 rule, and the infographic on the here I thought explains it quite nicely. So basically, for every 20 minutes, you need to look away for 20 seconds, it's something 20 feet away. 20 feet away is 6 meters for us. So every 20 minutes. So there's studies that have shown that your digital eye strain gets really bad after 20 minutes and to 60 minutes. That's when the symptoms really kick in. So this has been around since the early 1990s, derived by the American Academy of Optometry. And it's the only major rule. So you need to remind all your patients who are using a digital device about this rule. Okay, and if you read this, read the slide. It says here that that computer vision syndrome is the most common stress injuries occurring at work, and it's caused by staring at a computer screen for too long, causing headaches, blurred vision, and watery eyes. So take a break every 20 minutes. So look, we're not saying take a break and reduce work flow or reduce your work productivity, but I told you at the beginning of this lecture that the main reason is prolonged screen time. It's not the screen time, it's the prolonged screen time. And so by practicing 20-20-20, it should be a start. So if there's something, second thing you want to take away from managing this is every 20 minutes, look something 20 feet away for 20 seconds, just to sort of like clicking on the refresh button on your screen. You kind of like clicking the refresh button on your eyes, if that's a crude analogy. So the internal digital eye strain, what do we do about that? So remember I said the internal digital eye strain is all things to do with eye strain, which we package nicely in a fancy word called asthenopia, and that's to do with your accommodative inversion system. So in addition to the 20-20, 20-20-20, you should also recommend a 15-minute break every 2 hours. So everything that I'm mentioning to you is evidence-based. So I'm not just saying it from anecdotal evidence. There's research studies that actually have done to prove this, right? So every 15 minutes, so every 2 hours, you need a 15-minute break. Every 20 minutes, you need a 20-second break. Okay, and your screen distance should be no less than 50 centimeters. Ideally, it should be 67 to 70 centimeters for desktops. I've searched for ideal distances for smartphones. We don't seem to have it, but the magic number seems to be 20 to 30 centimeters. But from my binocular vision background, basically, if you hold smartphones outside your Harman distance, so your Harman distance is from your knuckle to your arm, and if that distance should be the healthy working distance of any human being. So if you use that to judge for smartphones, you shouldn't be holding it closer than your Harman distance for smartphones. But I need you to remember for desktop, 50 centimeters. If your patient is older, so they're like progressed presbyopia, you can go slightly less than 50 centimeters. So you can go 40 something, right? It should be fine for them. But for your pre-presbyopic patients, magic number 50 centimeters is your distance. The bad numbers for smartphones is less than 20 centimeters, from what I can tell. But if you're a small person, then it's another issue altogether. And so there's something very interesting I want to tell you, and some of you may be shocked with this. 20% of users prefer a small induced exophoria or exo-associated phoria of 1.5 prism diopters compared to ortho posture. Okay, so provided that your patient has no other binocular vision problems, nothing serious, they've done a study that shows that if you left these patients who suffer from digital eye strain with an induced associated, so it's small induced exo-associated phoria of 1.5 prism diopters, they reported more relief than leaving the patient on ortho. And the reason for that is to buffer the overconvergence at near. That's the reason. So it's some form of buffering, because when you're looking at close, you are converging, continuously accommodating, and your ACA ratio is forcing converge, and the accommodative convergence is continuously active. So it is thought that if you were to leave them when they reduce, so that doesn't mean they're natural phoria, so you actually prescribe a prism to leave them at 1.5 exo, there may be some relief in addition to your normal astigmatism correction and your blue light lenses and whatever else. Okay, so another thing for you to consider is occupation-specific prescription. So I'm wondering whether just prescribing multifocal lenses all these times, I don't know if the behavior has changed out there, but prescribing multifocal lenses for all computer use workers is the best solution for them if they're doing continuous work as part of their day job. Evidence shows that prescribing an intermediate and near lens with an expanded intermediate field of view may be more beneficial in combating digital eye strain as opposed to a multifocal lens. A multifocal lens is trying to preserve distance vision, and if you notice, the intermediate zone of it is not as big as the near and the far. So an office-style lens may be better suited. So the thought is that you should have an occupational lens for these patients in presbyopic patients. In pre-presbyopic patients, you may want to consider an accommodative support lenses in non-emmetropes. I say that because we've got no studies showing that emmetropes should have some sort of low plus up near. I can't answer that question because I've got no evidence. But I have seen a lot of blue blocking lenses with like a plus or 50 ad on the internet. I've seen lots of, and there may be some of you that may want to consider prescribing plano lenses. I haven't got any evidence for emmetropes. We've got studies that deal with non-emmetropes. So emmetropic patients may benefit from accommodative support or anti-fatigue lenses. The million-dollar question for all of us today is, should we be giving all our patients some form of near correction if they're using the computer? We don't have randomized controlled trials for emmetropes, so that I can't answer that question. My gut is probably similar to yours in thinking that they should have something. And if you're going to prescribe something, you have to make sure that you've checked the lag, the AMP, the NPC, the NRAs, the PRAs. You have to have done a full proper workup if you're going to give the patient an anti-fatigue lens if they've got a plano prescription. And then I also want you to consider the cognitive demand of reading material. And that is particularly in pediatric patients. So pediatric patients that is using a high cognitive material may cause them to fatigue a bit more. And maybe, and really I'm treading here on thin ice when I say this, maybe if we're trying to move all our schooling onto the online platform, we need to be very, very cautious about saying this, but maybe preferably make them read it off a hard copy as opposed to a digital copy. But knowing our circumstances, that's what I'm saying. I'm treading on thin ice, and I'm a bit cautious in saying this. But I want you to factor in the type of patient you're talking to when you're thinking about these. So I wanted to talk about pediatric patients because just like contact lens wearers, I feel that they're a vulnerable population, and I feel that we as eye care fraternity need to practice some form of public eye care when talking about these patients. So there's one thing I need you to take home is caution the length of screen time without breaks. I should have highlighted the word without breaks. And so that is something as a general statement I want to make about, is that they can use the computer, they can use the digital device, but without the break is a big problem. Okay, and so what I've put up for you is the American Academy of Pediatricians, which is adopted by the World Health Organization, that's basically telling you that children under the age of 2 should not spend any screen time except for video chatting. So any child under 2 years old shouldn't be seen with a tablet, a cell phone, right? That is basically the rule for proper visual hygiene. Preschoolers, they should take breaks every 5 minutes. I don't know how practical this is. School-going age, so that's basically in kids that are like, I think up to like grade 7, 8, somewhere around there, before they hit teenagers. Breaks every 10 minutes, and adolescents and adults breaks every 20 minutes. So my message for the kids, and for there's anyone that has any pediatric interest, is to please spread the word about little kids right? Toddlers. Because I don't know if you know, but if you go to a shopping mall or if you sit somewhere, you do watch the kids these days. I always have some playing with the parents' cell phone or some sort of device, or parents when they go into a restaurant, putting a tablet there and making them watch a movie. I'm a bit concerned, like for a 1-year-old watching off that screen. I'm wondering when that child hits 60, will they have any retinal damage? I'm just saying I don't have any evidence, but instinctively, that probably is where the pediatricians are going with this. And the definition of a break when they use a digital device is putting the device face down. So the light mustn't be emanating from it. And another thing that they advise is children model the behavior of their parents. So you need to explain to parents that they need to be practicing the digital hygiene as well for their kids to model that behavior. Okay, and if kids are using their devices, it should not be any closer than arm's distance. So again, just to reiterate, arm's distance is from your knuckle to your elbow. That for kids should be, so anything closer than that would be unsafe visual hygiene. Right? Okay, I hope I've made it clear. Any take home here? So the vulnerable group here is under 2 years old. No screen time for under 2 years old. They can video chat with grandpa and grandma, especially during this COVID lockdown. Okay, so I thought I should also touch on myopia control with screen time. So you know that the whole world is up in arms about the spread of myopia, and in particular kids, and in countries, particularly in the East, and now it's spreading to the West. And I'm concerned that if everybody is moving over to these digital platforms, and kids generally love these devices, I'm worried about whether it's going to speed up the myopia epidemic. So this is Professor Bruce Evans, and you may be, if you're a binocular vision optometrist, or if you remember in your optometry school days, you may have come across his textbook. And so I follow him on Twitter, and last month or 2 months ago, and I shared it with a couple of my friends. This is what he said, and I thought this was quite cool because he was trying to follow the 20/20 rule, something quick and easy for everybody to remember. So I thought that this may be useful for us. So he says, following my last tweet suggesting 30-30 rule for myopia prevention and control, I have modified it to 30-30 out. For near work greater than 30 centimeters, discontinue every 30 minutes, with school breaks always spent outdoors. Okay, together with a balanced diet and balanced vision. So I thought that this may be another nice rule. So he's based it. He's a professor, so he's based it off a scientific study from one of the scientific studies in the East. I can't remember the exact. I think it's Huang et al. And he even tweets that. So for kids, for myopia control and for screen time, apart from what I've just said, so try to stay. So I said harm and distance. So they are saying 30 centimeters every 30 minutes, and make sure that you profess the message that when they have a lunch break or a school break, that they should be playing outside, because not all blue light is bad. Remember, the sunlight also has the violet light in it, and that has been shown scientifically to slow down myopia. So during this lockdown period, I'm very concerned if kids are only indoors, and if they're doing homework only indoors, I'm hoping that they're spending couple of hours outdoors to reduce myopia. So there is sort of like mutually exclusive digital eye strain, and we can't separate the two, and myopia control, especially in these times. Okay, and so I've seen there's lots of interest in blue blocking lenses, so I knew that it was going to come up. So I want to let you know that blue blocking lenses reduce eye strain only. We do not have any randomized control trials to say that it prevents retinal damage. Although the evidence from the laboratory studies on mammalian retina is being used to say that it can cause retinal damage. The papers point to high blue blocking lenses. So I don't know if you're aware, there's just no blue blocking lenses. There's low blue blockers, there's high blue blockers. Just remember, if you go too high, you may also distort the vision of the person. So it may affect your reading. So low blue blockers, I think, is probably like around 20 to 30%, and high blue blockers is around 50 to 60%. There's also medium, which is in between. evidence shows that high blue blockers cause reduction in eye strain, but just be careful that they don't interfere with, distort the color and or distort the vision itself. So if you are prescribing these, don't willy-nilly prescribe them. Note that there are different degrees of blue blocking lenses, right? Okay, so greater than 50% would mean that they are blocking more than 50% of blue light, right? 20% means they're only blocking 20% of blue light. So just prescribing a blue blocking lens may not necessarily treat symptomatic patients. They may be preventative or prophylactic for asymptomatic patients. But if you have a patient that is displaying high level of symptomology, I would try to find a blue blocking lens that has more blue blocking protection. And all our local labs have different types of blue blocking lenses. Maybe it's in your best interest when you're prescribing it, so you know if it's going to work, that you know how much of blue light it's blocking. Okay. Second thing about blue blocking that I need you to know about is that it is shown that if you use blue blocking lenses in the evening, it will reduce alertness and reduce the effects on sleep. So basically, they say that if you're going to use your laptops or your digital devices in the evenings or when the sun has set, okay, you are going to sort of like decrease that cycle that's causing your melatonin levels to reduce at night. So the latency onset of sleep may be better, and the effects of the sleep quality may be reduced. It's also shown that people who use blue blocking lenses have shown to have improved blink rate, right, to reduce dry eye symptoms. Okay, so it may improve blinks and reduce dry eye symptoms. There is evidence to show that. So they would have obviously measured the blink rate and looked at the ocular surface of the patients. So my caveat, which is what I said earlier on, don't forget exposure to blue visible light reduces myopia progression in young children. So not all blue light is bad. There is some good blue light. It's just not natural to have blue light in the evening. So that's why when you look at these pictures of these people looking at computer screens in the dark, reading in the dark with computer screen, those are the ones that are going to suffer from sleep deprivation. External dry eye care. Okay, so what I was mentioning previously now was focusing more on the asthenopia and the internal dry eye. The internal digital eye strain. For the external digital eye strain, ocular lubricants have shown to help in part. It doesn't take it away, but it does help in part. We have studies that show that if you take omega-3 supplements for 45 days up to 3 months, there has been evidence for the dry eye improvement. But I think that in general, contact lens wearers and people with dry would know this. Okay, and then watch for ergonomics for the environment. Reduce air conditioning. So basically, low humidity environments. Anything that fans that blow on the patient's eye should be removed from an ergonomic perspective. And then there are software packages where you can use audible prompts every 4 seconds to remind the patient to blink. This has shown to increase blinking, but it hasn't been shown to affect digital eye strain, but it does affect the blink rate. So I would dissuade you from using the ones that have the visual prompt, because that'll add another problem to the digital eye strain. The audible may be better, but I want you to know it'll increase your blinking, but it may not affect your digital eye strain. Ergonomics. So there was the person I think that asked earlier on about the lighting. So glare. So basically for desktops, your lighting, your fluorescent tubes above you should be perpendicular to your desktop screen. So at right angles to it. Okay, that's how it should be. And your laptop or your desktop screen, the top line of the screen should be at or slightly below your eye level, such that you're not dropping your chin too low down, or you're not in the primary gaze, and then your gaze is reduced to about 10 to 15 degrees. So you are in a depressed gaze. That's how you should be positioning your screen, and your screen should not be in front of an unshaded window. So meaning like a window, so you shouldn't have your screen in front of you and behind you there's a nice window. If you have that, it should have some sort of blinds or curtains to block out because the light coming through that window will cause glare. And then there is something called display screen equipment. So in the UK, the ergonomics for the UK, which seems to be quite good, all their computer screen monitors has this anti-glare screen. They call it display screen equipment. So placing the anti-glare screen over your monitor may be useful. There is evidence to prove that it works. And then anti-reflection coating, there is scientific evidence to prove that anti-reflection coatings reduce glare. And then there was someone that asked me something about anti-reflection coating and blue blocking. So you must know that they're dealing with totally different things. The blue blocking, I'm advocating for blue blocking for reduction of eye strain, and I'm advocating for anti-reflection coating for reduction of glare. So they're two separate issues we're talking about. I've got no evidence to show that maybe there is in the older days with the older studies that ARC may be improving eye strain. Then there's something very interesting that I wanted to bring to your attention. And I even wrote it down for me to remember to tell you. So there's something called acuity reserve. So the rule is for prolonged reading on a laptop, the text size should be twice your near visual acuity. So that was quite shocking when I heard that. So basically, I don't know if we're in a habit of recording near visual acuity, but I think that if you have a patient who's working on a computer, that you should record the near acuity because if your near acuity is 6.6, it implies that your font size should be an equivalent of 612 for prolonged work on devices. So your acuity reserve needs to be double your near acuity size. So that would prove to you, that will show to you how fatigued you can get. So if you had a near acuity of 612, then for you to actually experience comfortable vision, your screen font should be 624. That's essentially what I'm saying, right? Okay, that's the screen font size. I still haven't figured out how to measure the font size on the screen. And if anybody else there knows this, please let us know. But I haven't been able to figure that one out. But I just thought that I should mention this principle of acuity reserve, and that whatever your near acuity is, if you're going to do continuous amount of screen time, that your font size should be 2 times your near acuity. I hope you're almost there. So this is American Academy's recommendation for how you should be seated in front of a computer. Okay, your thighs should be parallel to the floor, your back should be upright. They even show you a wrist guard. Look at the gaze, minimum 20 degrees in a downward gaze, and the top of the screen should be at eye level or slightly below. And they've even got a footrest. And they've even gone so far as to giving you height of the floor versus height of the desk. So that's your posture. And these are all over the internet. You can find it very, very easily. And so there was somebody that mentioned about this being a multifaceted disorder and that we need to work with physiotherapists. So I wanted to mention to you about the effects on the musculoskeletal system. So if you look at, this lovely picture here I found on the ponsterview.com site, go and check it out. So this is basically showing you the posture that your neck should be in when you're using a cell phone. So if you look at the extreme right-hand side, when the neck is totally forward, it's causing a lot of bending on the neck. And if you look at the first one where there's the green dot, that's with your neck, right, at between 0 and 10 to 12 degrees. So a study was done, and it showed that 62% of users complain of neck and shoulder pain with using digital devices. And this picture is basically trying to show you the cervical spinal load and neck flexion. So the forward head position, together with the augmented spinal load, right, and the static position of the spine and the neck for long periods of time is the reason why we have neck and shoulder pain. Okay, so that forward drop, Okay, and the static position of the neck, actually, it says that your neck shouldn't be in a static position for more than 8 minutes. And if you think about it, how many computer workers, how many digital device users are in their neck in that position for hours sometimes, including myself. So the treatment is stretching. So you want to regulate, you want regular head movements like stretches or micro breaks to stretch the muscle. When you move your neck or your back, it stimulates blood flow to your vertebral discs, okay? And the changes from the static posture will reduce the neck load and muscle fatigue. So the reason for this occurring is the continuous static position of it, okay? And so movement, micro movements, micro breaks and small regular head movements during digital device use is recommended. So you shouldn't expect to be in a fixed position, and that's when you have the muscle fatigue kicking in. Okay, and so I hope I've given you a little bit on the ergonomics of the posture and the use of physiotherapists with that. So my parting shot is that screen time is a necessary evil for the fourth industrial revolution. It doesn't appear to be going anywhere anytime soon, and COVID-19 lockdown has created the new normal, which is basically depending on screen time. Our responsibility as an eye care fraternity is public health education on proper visual hygiene, okay? And one thing I don't want us to be guilty of is to think that this is not a developing world issue. So we mustn't think only developed countries like the UK, the US have these issues. As a developing nation, I think it would be very, very short-sighted, no pun intended, of us to assume that citizens of South Africa are not using cell phones. I mean, if you look at people these days, even the old age community is using digital devices. So I just basically want to coin the term that screen time should include screen breaks. So you can watch your screens, you can use your screens for as much as you want, but if you don't have screen breaks, that's when the digital eye strain actually kicks in. Okay, and so I promised you a resource. I wonder if Mr. Kobe can actually post this, but if you Google digital, or maybe take a picture with your cell phone, if you Google digital eye strain prevalence measurements and ameliorations by Professor Shepard and James Wilson from Aston University, their paper is a really good review paper. Look, it'll take you about 2 hours to read it, so maybe you want to read bits of it every day. But I strongly recommend that if you read this, it should color in all the gaps that I may have missed whilst listening to me throughout this webinar. Okay, and then I didn't mention it, and this is a picture joke for you to remember, is don't forget to switch off your devices 1 or 2 hours before going to bed every night. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to go back. Say that again.
We've got about 10 minutes for questions.
Yes. But before we actually do, I wanted to just go back to the phrase that you coined in terms of screen time should include breaks. And this is my suggestion of what they should do. The colleagues should do and break. All right, colleagues, that was just on a lighter note. We do have a few questions. I think we should be able to tackle them in less than 10 minutes. Okay. The question that I have here says, in terms of refractive errors, does digital eye syndrome affect both uncorrected hyperopes and myope in a similar way? Especially looking at the subjective questionnaires, is it possible that maybe hyperopes may present with severe symptoms?
There is, I think if you were to rate the two, it'll be astigmatism, hyperopia, then myopia.
Okay.
If that makes sense, in terms of way in which they would develop their refractive error.
Okay. The next one says, can a 5-year-old be tested for digital eye syndrome?
I think with the level of testing that's required, you should be able to do flexibilities. You should be able to do, because they are able to communicate with you, should be able to do a MEMRET. That shouldn't be an issue. I don't see why not if the child is precocious enough. Obviously, if the child has other issues and you may have to depend a bit more on objective testing, there are sophisticated tools which we may not have access to, where most of these studies are done using autorefractors and special scientific autorefractor that measures your accommodation over time. I don't know whether it'll be as thorough as an adult. That's my only concern. But you certainly can do something.
Okay. There is another question that says, how long does it take for untreated digital eye syndrome to cause refractive error?
I think, how long does it take? I haven't come across any direct evidence for that. I think that would be the risk factor, but that's a very good question. If you could send Maimo your email address, I could send you an answer, if that's okay. I could look. That's a nice question. I like that type of question. Mr. Kobe, if that person could send you.
Yeah, I can definitely. Then I'll forward. Okay, no problem. So the next one here says, I think this is more a comment. Says, what might be worrying than the damaging effects of long periods of digital use is the research indicating that the biochemical effects of substance abuse and digital addiction is exactly the same. Then it ends by saying digital cocaine.
Okay.
It's an interesting one. Now the next one says, what is your view of the tinted lenses that are used to regulate the circadian rhythm to help with sleep with the use of devices at nighttime?
Yeah, I did see there is filters that they use to actually do that. I'm assuming it's similar to the blue light lenses. That's what I'm assuming. I would say that it should not be used unnecessarily in the daytime, right? Okay. Maybe what I'm trying to get at is that if you don't use these lenses, like if your kids, for example, play with phones a lot at night, they could become hyperactive. So I think what they were trying to do with these lenses is basically reduce the activity levels in the hormonal levels in your head to try and calm you down to that effect. I really am trying to stay away from the sleep study questions because and even a psychologist that I had a chat yesterday about the sleep issue, and I really said, okay, she asked me about the same thing. I said, it's better she speaks to it because they have done a lot of work on that. But I actually haven't come across any local psychologists prescribing those lenses because as far as I'm concerned, they would send it to us. But I would think they're very similar to the blue blocking lenses, unless the person who sent the message knows something a bit more than us that may want to share.
Okay.
You can type it.
Right, yeah, definitely. Now, the next one says, for a symptomatic patient with partial aniridia due to a cataract extraction, what percentage of blue blocking lenses would you advise?
Okay, so I actually put a point in this PowerPoint here, but I took it off because I didn't want to start a conversation, which is what you brought into. So the vulnerable group for that may require this is pseudo-fakes and aphakic patients because they don't have the crystalline lens natural blue blocking status. Okay, so I would recommend that. I would say that's fine, although the aniridia patient would have bigger issues of glare and it'd be more of a low vision problem. And so there's other issues that will be compounding the problem. So they may need some low vision care in addition to the blue blocking lenses.
Okay, the next one says, please give the website name again for a picture on the musculoskeletal disorders. Thank you.
Okay, it's the Ponce de Vue. So I think it's the SLR website, Ponce de Vue. I can't even spell it, P-O-N-T. It's a French name, Ponce de Vue. Unless, Maimo, you can share that picture. Can you?
Okay, let me just go through the slide.
Can you type it out?
I'm not French, Dr. Munsamy. So
right hand side, points de vue, POINTSDEV, and they've got a whole paper on the skeletal muscle issue.
Okay. Maybe for those colleagues who do not see it, let's just do this and let's just highlight this. There it is there. Okay.
Thank you.
As colleagues are doing that, the next one says, under what specific condition or indices should accommodative support lenses be prescribed in emmetropes?
Well, I think if they have any accommodation issues, I think that's important. That would be an issue. So emmetropia is defined with refractive error being 0 at distance. It doesn't mean that if they have 0 refractive error at distance, that they will have a near condition being. So if they have accommodative infacility, accommodative insufficiency, ill-sustained accommodation. So I would go to all the accommodative disorders. If I was thinking off the top of my head, for a quick answer like that.
Okay. I'm just trying to scan to see if there's any last questions. Let me see. There's one here. It says, would the built-in blue light filters on smart devices nullify the use of blue blockers from lenses to decrease eye strain?
Yeah, so it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it reduces it. Remember, nothing is going to take away all the blue light, not even your blue blocking lenses and not even your screen filter. So the night mode on your screen, they all are reducing it. So it's a nice start. So that's why I mentioned that your digital blue light is not as harmful as the blue light that we're thinking of that causes the macular degeneration. So with the new modern devices and these built-in filters with the types of LED and these screen filters in there, it is way less harmful than maybe 10 years ago, for example. So using your devices for like under 10, 20 minutes, that would be like fine. But it's when you're using your devices for continuous use, that's when you need to worry about. So you are asking me, is the filter enough? I would say the filter is not enough. That's very important for you to know. The filter is creating a better condition, but I think that you would still need your conventional optometric intervention.
Okay, brilliant. I see the colleagues are just simply acknowledging the presentation and showing their appreciation. I see a lot of thank yous there to you, Dr. Munsamy, and I also need to, at this point, say thank you to the colleagues for sending their questions. I see there are no more questions. So I think on that note, then we just maybe to remind colleagues of a few things before we close. To say that please don't forget to send your HPCSA registration number. The email address was shared right at the top on your chats. It's cpd@blueconnect.co.za. Please note that the connect is with a K, not with a C. And thank you so much for those who have heeded our call to contribute to the platform. We sincerely appreciate that. As I said, that we rely on this just to keep the CPDs coming. The sessions coming. I see that there are colleagues who are requesting the presentation, Dr. Munsamy, for the presentation to be shared with it. Okay, I will share the presentation.
Just PDF it, right?
Will do. And there are also those who are asking for that the questionnaire that you presented somewhere in the presentation, saying that if you can share that quiz. So if you can send it to me, I'll send it together with the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. And then let me just see if there's anything else to remind the colleagues. Yes. So just also a reminder that the recordings will be posted on our YouTube channel. Normally it takes about 2 days for us to be able to extract the recording and be able to post it on the YouTube channel. The channel is Blue Connect. So from time to time, what we do on most weekends, we do send out the links via email and via WhatsApp and via Facebook and all the other social media. So do watch out for those links when we do send the recordings. We normally send them maybe 2 or 3 recordings at a time. So definitely there will be recording for those who are actually asking for a recording of this webinar. Just to indicate that if you are watching the recording, unfortunately you will not be allocated CPD points, because CPD points were we were allocating for people who directly registered here, because I've seen colleagues were asking that question. Also, I've seen that a lot of colleagues are sending emails to my personal email address. As I did say in the presentations, in the previous sessions, please do email to cpd@blueconnect.co.za, because I do have people who are assisting us in terms of collating your HPCSA registration numbers and assisting us with regards to developing your CPD certificate. So when you send directly to me or to my WhatsApp, unfortunately, those registration numbers might be lost in the process. So I urge you to email directly to the email address at the top there, not any other email address, please, colleagues. You can use the email addresses for anything else, but in as far as the HPCSA registration number is concerned, please, let's use that email address. Tomorrow, we have an interactive session with Dr. Hosili Klape. As the youngsters normally say, it's going to be lit. So please do register if you have not registered, because we will be having an interactive session. I noted that some colleagues wanted to speak today. We could not allow them to speak because of the time. So please, colleagues, those of you who prefer to come into the room, tomorrow is the session that will allow you to come into the room. And on that note, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to you, Dr. Munsamy, for taking time out to come and share with the colleagues this valuable information. There are a lot of things that I did not even know myself. As you were talking, I was actually even moving my screen away. I'm watching my laptop. I was moving it away from this to trying to manage the distance. So I thank you sincerely for that. And I think the colleagues also appreciate. I see the thank you are still coming in. Any parting shot or any last word from your side, Dr. Munsamy?
I really appreciate the invite, and I really hope that whatever I've said today is taken to our patients. And I think from a public health perspective, that was a motivation for coming today. So the biggest thank you would be if you go and if you basically take whatever I've said and use it on your patients to help them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see there's a last question to say, do you send your HPCSA registration numbers all the time? No, colleagues. If you have sent before, you don't have to send. Only those who are attending with us for the first time or registering for the first time. For those of you who have sent before, rest assured we do have your details, and then certificates will be generated. We are running slightly behind because of the manpower, but you will definitely get your certificates in the next week or so. Thank you so much. And thanks to you, Dr. Munsamy, and everyone else. See you again tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.